For as long as there have been cars, there has been enthusiasts, the people who soup up, who modify, customize, seek out, and just go around for joyrides. But things might shift a little bit. As we transition to smart cars, autonomous vehicles, to cars that people might not necessarily own anymore, how is this going to change? Our next panel will grapple with this specific dilemma. Please welcome the Drive's Alex Roy, Trinity Ventures, Patricia Nikesh, and Turo CEO, Andrea Haddad.
I'm Alex Roy. Thanks so much for coming to our panel. And we have Patricia Nikesh from Trinity Ventures and Andrea Haddad from Turo. Thank you so much for coming to discuss this.
Thank you.
Let's dive right in because we have limited time. Actually, wait. Before we get started, everyone should log into the app, the Sligo app on Collision, and submit a question and vote, and we'll resolve it at 19 minutes. I know what the question is, but I don't know what your answers are, and that should be pretty feisty. We'll keep my opinion out of it. So let's dive right in. 7 or 8 years ago, when car-sharing platforms first became a thing, and they all used almost indistinguishable language, and there didn't appear to be any one solution any stronger than any other. What were the inflection points that brought Turo to scale? What decisions were made that actually brought it to where it is today, which I believe to be is the largest platform of its kind?
Yeah, we just celebrated our 6 millionth user, which makes us by far the largest peer-to-peer car-sharing platform in the world. We also celebrated our 230,000 vehicles that were listed. So we're very excited about the scale that car-sharing is taking on with our peer-to-peer model. So 7 years ago, the market was a lot smaller, and it was primarily around commodity cars that were renting by the hour. This was the vision initially for car sharing, and it was cars that were located in downtown areas, sort of commuter cars that you could use for an hour or two to run some errands, to if you don't own a car or you can't get a taxi. This was the era before Lyft and Uber existed. The alternative was taxis. They were expensive and very hard to find. Fast forward 7 years later, obviously the world of ride-sharing is amongst us, and taxis are a thing of the past. And then car sharing has also dramatically evolved in relations with these changes. And now the reason why you would rent a car for an hour on a car sharing platform is just a lot less relevant, because you can just get point-to-point transportation with ride-sharing. On the other hand, with our model of connecting the existing cars that are out there, we have 300 million of those in the US, almost 1.1 billion cars around the world. And those cars are very varied, all kinds of different makes and models, sizes and budgets. And now, people are using these cars to get out of town for the weekend or as a replacement for a rental car. The average trip on Turo is around 3 to 4 days. And so it's very far from the days of you'd use car sharing for an hour or two. And some of the decisions that we've made over time helped accelerate that. We can talk more about that, but one of the big ones has been to make it a much more human experience.
Are you referring to the removal of the dongles?
Yeah, we used to have this hardware that we would build into the cars that would make the access super seamless, where people would just use the app to get in and get out. And what we found out was a lot of people were very uncomfortable with that situation. They were very uncomfortable, in particular as the host, as the car owner, they were very uncomfortable letting anyone drive their car without them knowing who that is. And so one of the most counterintuitive decisions that we made a few years ago, which helped accelerate the growth of the business, especially growth of supply, was creating much more of that human experience where, yes, you have an app, and yes, people use the app to check them in, but they meet in person. They meet on the app first. You've got a profile, you've got your reviews, you've got your ratings, you've got messaging, you connect the hosts and the guests, and then when they're picking up the car or they're delivering the car, they actually meet in person, and there's a handshake, there's I look you in the eye, I trust you because you know who I am, you know that I own this car, I know that you're driving my car, I know where you're going, and it's a much more trustworthy experience that have really changed the trajectory of the business.
Yeah, I was just going to chime in on trust. Go ahead.
If you had asked, you invested in 2014 or 15. Were the dongles still in place at the time when you invested?
No. So when I first started talking to Turo, first met Andre, they were in place. He had shared his vision of why he thought removing that friction from the rental process was going to be key to the future of the company. Checked in 12 months later, and he had checked that box, and in fact, we were starting to see the results, and that's when we invested. So it was a combination of a management team that does what it says it's going to do and seeing exciting results.
I mean, if you ask me as a sports car owner, and there are a lot more sports cars on the platform today than there were before, if you'd asked me to gamble any amount of money on trust being the glue that would allow the platform to scale, I would have said you were absolutely out of your minds. So was that a critical hinge upon which the growth has swung?
Absolutely critical. I mean, I think when you're building a marketplace, if there isn't strong trust between the different parts of the marketplace, in our lingo, it's the host and the guests, there's just no marketplace.
Yeah.
For us, what appeared to be very critical, including for sports cars and any kind of car, I myself am a host on Turo, and I listed my 911 was the very first 911 that was listed back in 2012.
Is it a manual transmission?
It is a manual transmission.
And you put this on the platform and allow strangers to drive it?
I do have a big section that says this is a manual transmission, and I ask my guests, are you sure you're comfortable driving a manual? And it's been now booked more than 100 times, and I've met with a lot of car enthusiasts who are actually manual. A lot of them were insulted when I asked them, are you comfortable driving a manual? Like, I only drive manual. What are you talking about? I want to get your car because I'm a manual driver. And so, that trust, that ability to get to know one another and to exchange creates a lot of trust between the hosts and the guests. And frankly, it's unlocked the kinds of cars that I didn't think would ever be on Turo.
Like McLarens?
Like we have some incredible cars. We have a lot of premium cars. We've got a lot of BMWs and McLarens and Porsches and Mercedes-Benz and Teslas, and a lot of things that, frankly, I didn't think that people would ever share them. We thought people would share more sort of humble cars, but it turns out that the earnings that you can generate from the marketplace can make those cars affordable. A lot of people tell us, I was able to afford this Tesla because with a couple of rentals on the platform, I can actually make the Tesla cost me the equivalent of a Prius.
What is the percentage breakdown between casual hosts or people who put their cars on the platform and people who build businesses within the Turo ecosystem?
So the vast majority of our hosts are individual hosts with one or two cars. That's more than 90% of our hosts. What we are seeing, though, is in the last couple of years, the emergence of what we're calling power hosts. And I've been in marketplace businesses before. I was at eBay for many years. Same phenomenon happened at eBay many years ago, where some of the sellers became power sellers and started building, entrepreneurial businesses on top of the eBay platform. And that's a phenomenon that a lot of marketplaces actually see. Yeah. When you provide a solution that enables an entrepreneur to, if they only do one thing well, everything else is taken care of. We take care of bringing them, the demand. We take care of payments. We take care of insurance. They only need to be, delivering great customer service and and have a good car. A lot of people take us up on the offer, and now we see a lot of power hosts on the platform. Some people now have many more than a couple of cars, and you're looking at Turo as an opportunity to supplant, their earnings in a significant way.
You could sort of be their marketing and distribution
platform. And we're becoming their distribution
platform.
Right?
Yeah.
And now we have some boutique rental car companies, the small guys that have been crushed by the consolidation of the marketplace, of the car rental marketplace over the last 20 years. As you know, the big car rental companies have been consolidating, and now in the US, the big three players represent 75% of the car rental market. So these boutique rental car companies, including with unique fleets, have difficulty accessing demand because they can't bid on Google, they can't advertise on Facebook, they don't have the technology to integrate with the OTAs, and so they're finding that Turo is a great venue. So now we're expanding, the marketplace to commercial hosts, boutique rental car companies that are finding that Turo is a great platform for them to reach an audience.
I was just saying Turo can become sort of a platform to encourage entrepreneurship.
Well,
right?
that's a nice way of saying something you put in different language in a Medium post a few years ago, which seemed that you were hoping or anticipating that Turo would go to war with the incumbents.
Well, when Trinity initially invested in Turo, I wrote a blog post, and the start of the blog post was about a recent car rental experience I had that was absolutely horrific. And
not with Turo.
But not with Turo. Not with Turo. With one of the consolidated.
Was it Hertz? Enterprise?
I shall not name names. It was a terrible experience. Okay, and one of the things I was super excited about Turo was I felt like the experience that Turo affords, particularly with sort of the relationship directly with the car renter, would provide a much better experience. And at the time, I laughed because Andre actually asked me to tone it down a little bit in terms of my vitriol against the car rental agencies. One of the things that was really exciting to me was we'd been looking in the car sharing space for a long time and sharing economy space for a long time. What I was really excited about is car rental is an enormous market, and it has not been disrupted, and Turo is the platform to do it.
Well, speaking of disruption, a certain company that maybe you'll name has been waging vicious war on Turo's operations in California, in a city that I love, San Francisco. You want to talk tactically about what's happening on the ground right now in terms of Turo versus incumbents?
So, I mean, the big car rental incumbent is Enterprise. They are the largest player in the car rental space. It's a very successful company. 30 years ago, they were a startup themselves, and they disrupted Avis and Hertz and leapfrogged the initially bigger names in the car rental world. But now they're the incumbent, and of course, they look at our growth and the power of the peer-to-peer model. Think about it. Enterprise has 1.5 million cars in their fleet. Imagine, how many cars will be one day, on our platform, because there's so many, 300 million cars alone in the U.S. So I think they could see the writing on the wall, which is over time we're going to surpass, the size of the fleet that they have, and of course our cars it's not our fleet, it's our hosts' cars, but they'll be a lot more interesting.
It looks like they consider you an existential threat in the same way that Uber considers self-driving an existential threat.
I think they do, and I think they've been very aggressively mounting a campaign against us. In many states, they're trying to pass laws in the U.S. this year. In 17 states, they've been trying to pass laws that are anti-Turo, and in particular in California, where they've been working very closely with SFO, and now we're in a lawsuit with San Francisco Airport. We've countersued. They're arguing that we are a rental car company, and we believe that we're actually helping normal people monetize their cars, and we're not a rental car company. And so,
and they don't have the pretext of claiming that you're exploiting drivers, which is which is a whole different defense that Uber uses, but you don't have to hide behind. No. I'm curious about how is Enterprise framing this politically such that they can justify trying to slow down Turo's expansion?
They're framing it by going after all of the places where they're effectively funding with rental car taxes the operations of those regulatory instances. So, for example, airports. As you know, airports are funded with different sources of funding. One of them is the rental car tax. Mm-hmm. And so they're going out and telling airports this is unfair. People are now using Turo and they're not paying your rental car tax. And what they forget to say is that rental car companies are paying a rental car tax, but airports have also built massive rental car centers for them. At SFO, for those of you who know that airport, there's a massive rental car center. There's a train that takes people from, and we're not using any of these facilities. They're using tens of thousands of square footage for their thousands of cars that are parked permanently at the airport, that are maintained at the airport to run their business.
In fact, one of the benefits of Turo is that
we don't have any of that.
Don't use those, right?
Yeah, people
the car
just
gets
meet
brought to
directly
you
at the curb.
curbside, which
Exactly.
is super
people
convenient.
So we want to work with airports. We want to pay a permitting fee to be able to be a great citizen with all the airports, but we don't think that the rental car tax applies because we're not using all of those facilities that they've built for the rental car companies.
We're running low on time, and there's a question I have for you. You've invested in a lot of interesting companies across many sectors. What do self-driving cars do to the Turo model, which is rooted in human driving?
Well, I think self-driving can actually be an enabler in some way. Like we just talked about the handoff, right? If you're renting from an owner, if that car can be self-driven to me as the renter, that can actually reduce friction in the model.
Doesn't that make you a competitor? So if there's a Tesla in the network now, what do you drive?
Tesla.
You drive a Tesla. All right, so Elon Musk has said that when they're autonomous, they will only be usable. An owner can only place them on the Tesla network. That you can't put your Tesla into a rival sharing network.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do about that?
I would not be bullish on closed networks because look, from a consumer will win out, and what consumer cares about is the different use cases in their life. They're going up skiing, they need four-wheel drive. They've got a passel of kids in the back, they need an SUV. They're going away to Napa for the weekend for whatever, an anniversary trip. They want Andre's car. So you want to be able to rent the car that you want for the occasion you need it for. And I don't think a closed system works. I don't think a closed system wins.
For sharing or for autonomy?
Yes.
Or in any system?
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, I think people want choice. People want selection. I think people, there's no history of any closed marketplace that has ever been successful.
So you're not.
So I think it's a silly idea that Tesla would create its own network.
So you're bearish on OEMs creating single brand.
Yeah, I don't think OEMs
autonomy.
have distinguished themselves by building great software until now.
That's snarky, but probably true. We're almost out of time. Where's the question, and what are the results? Where is that? The question, I believe, was, in the near future, will car ownership go away?
Yes,
will it go away?
I don't think it will. I mean, I think you could, certainly not in the near future. Even in the long term, I think you look at, plane ownership. There are plenty of people who own small planes, right? It becomes more of a hobby.
Not commercial aircraft.
Not commercial aircraft, no.
Andre?
Yeah, I mean,
ownership?
I think car ownership is here to stay. I think it will change a lot. I think it will be more shared ownership. Because the number one barrier for car ownership today is the cost, right? It's the number two item on the average household budget. Mm-hmm. And the cost of car ownership is tremendous. So if you make it easy, which is really our mission, Turo's mission is to make it easy for people to make their cars become an actual asset that generates earnings for them instead of just being a cost center.
Right.
If you can address the cost barrier for car ownership, I think you remove a lot of barriers for car ownership, and I think it will be more of a shared ownership where you don't just take on the cost exclusively yourself. You're also monetizing your car from time to time. I think that's the future of ownership of vehicles over the long term.
Last question with 30 seconds. In the same way that the Coalition for Safer Streets, the lobbying organization made up of self-driving car companies, is lobbying really indirectly and somewhat directly to remove human ownership of cars. But Turo's survival depends on human ownership and cars being placed on the platform that you're not buying. So would you end up lobbying to protect human ownership, if not human privileges to drive?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's how can we ban people from wanting to drive? It's like banning.
It's like a right.
Yeah, it feels absolutely preposterous to me that we would ban human driving.
I'm so thrilled to hear that. Thank you so much, Andre. Thank you so much, Ms. Nakash. I'm Alex Roy, and I guess we're out of here. Oh, but let me just plug this organization, the Human Driving Association. Thanks so much.